Rife, ATR Motorsports. We're going to do a little interview with him on him and both a couple of his trucks that he's had for years. Dave's been in it now, what?
34 years.
34 years. So I can remember Dave back when he had a Gladiator monster truck. It was a mid-70s Ford.
79 Ford short box was the first one. Yeah, that was actually a truck that I drove to school, drove around, picked up my, well now she's my wife, but that was actually a truck we bought to drive, and one day I just thought, you know what, I'm going to build a monster truck. And my dad was not very happy with me, told me I was ruining it, and here we are 34 years later. I think the only part I have left of that truck is the steering wheel, but
it can go on the wall, right?
Right.
So, but anyhow, we're kind of doing a little history on a couple of his trucks. One is the Black Widow, which that truck, originally, the first time I met Dave, he had Gladiator. And then the next time would have been the next summer, then you had the Black Widow. That was in 95, right?
Yeah, 95, I think, I was trying to figure it out today. Between 94 and 95 is when I built a brand new truck. And at that time, we actually had a Dodge Dakota body on it that was original barefoot bodies. When Fred Schaefer got his original sponsorship with Dodge, they didn't have the new body styles out yet. So he bodied both his trucks with a Dodge Dakota body. And when he switched over to the new ones, somehow those bodies became available. I don't even really remember how I stumbled on. I actually still have one sitting outside here. I ended up with 3 of them total, and so I took the one and I built a brand new chassis and called it the Black Widow. So the first year and a half, 2 years, it was a Dodge Dakota body, and then there's a whole nother story on how it ended up getting to be the panel truck.
Yeah, because I remember you had it in Sandusky, Michigan, the one time. That had the new body on it.
It had the new body. I was trying to think today. I think we ran that Dakota body for 1 year, and actually Ed Beckley, Checkered Flag Promotions, called me one day and he said, "Hey, if I could find you a panel truck body, would you put it on?" And of course I was like, "Absolutely." And he said, "Okay, I found you one. You got to go get it. It's in Kansas City, Missouri." So I took my wife's Explorer, hooked a trailer to it, and we took off thinking we're going to buy a complete fiberglass body. And we drove 16 hours, whatever, 17 hours to get there, and we got there at 9 o'clock at night, and I knocked on the door, and it was a guy named Kenny Crum. He used to have a truck called Shark Attack. He opened the door and he said, "Come on in, we've been waiting for you." And he took me out back, and there was a pile of fiberglass laying perfectly flat on the ground. There was the front clip was still kind of together, rest of it was completely demolished.
Oh wow. And
I was just like, oh man, what did I get into? So I called my buddy Scott Nelson up here that owns the body shop, and I said, "Hey, I'm here to pick up this body, but it's smashed up pretty bad." And he said, "Is it big pieces or little pieces?" And I said, "Well, it's big pieces, but it's a lot of big pieces." And he said, "Get it, we can fix it." So we strapped it flat on the trailer, and we drove all the way back, and I went up to Nelson's the next day, excited. He was like you, he wouldn't even put his hand on the trailer. It was so smashed up. He just didn't even want to touch it, didn't want anything to do with it. And he said, "That's a little worse than I thought." And he gave me a guy's name that lives over here. Good old boy, you know. So we went over there, and I told the guy what I had, and the guy was like, he may or may not have had to use an illegal substance to see my vision, but after a little bit of talking to him, he was like, yeah. And so we actually picked up the piece that we thought was the roof section, hung it from some wires from his garage ceiling, and then we just started grabbing parts and trying to see where they had broken off.
The jigsaw puzzle pieces, huh?
We ended up figuring out that there was 2 chunks about this big, one from each side missing, and he said, "Come back in a week, I'll have it done." And so I went back a week later, and he had it all put back together. It was still really rough, so I took it back up to my buddies at Nelson Collision, and they they went through and they straightened it out, and they had all the body lines in it. I mean, it was really, really nice. And we had to get a guy to come airbrush it, which he didn't want to do that because it was Christmas, but I got to leave in like 7 days. I got to be gone. So we finally convinced this guy to airbrush it, did a really cool paint job on it. We put it on, we loaded it. I literally pulled the truck out, put it on the trailer, and took off. And the first weekend I tore it up because now I'm the star of the show. So now I'm driving different, I'm running harder. But 3 weeks into it, Tyler, Texas, me and Jess Berge were in the finals. And if you guys know, me and Jess were really good friends, but we did not like to lose to each other at all. And there was monster trucks and motocross, and I got a little crooked over the second jump and hit the ramps for the motocross, flipped it over. And so there it was, my brand new truck, my dream truck, laying upside down. And when they flipped it over, the whole body just went and fell on the ground. It was like an egg. It just fell on the ground. The front clip was still there. The front clip and the windshield. And I was just like, I was crushed. I couldn't believe it. I didn't know what I was going to do. Jack Caberna was there, and Jack actually lived, at that time he lived in Tulia, Texas. So he said, bring it to my shop, we'll fix it. So we all went to Jack's after the show, and for the week we stayed there, and we pieced it all back together again. It was not very good looking. A week later, we were in Casper, Wyoming. I ripped the front wheel off of it, and the tire got into it, smashed it up a little bit more. And then the following weekend, we went to Ardmore, Oklahoma, and as I was unloading the truck, Rod came outside of the block. So there I am, you know, my dream truck that I had spent every penny I had to get it ready. It's just junk. I mean, it was junk. I called my dad, and I was in tears. And I'm just like, Dad, at the time I had 2 little kids, you know, that I was trying to support with this monster truck. And I called my dad, and I said, Dad, it's ruined, and what am I going to do? And he said, well, and this is something I've always remembered. I was just telling Ryan Holman this the other day. He said, son, if monster trucks were easy, everybody would have one.
That's true. That is true.
And he said, you'll figure it out. And he hung up on me. And so I just sat there on the trailer.
Got a special appearance by Mason?
No.
Come on,
no. I just wanted to watch. That's all I wanted to do.
The man, the myth?
No. You got it right there.
The Psycho Circus driver right there.
Sonny Sins is the Psycho Circus driver.
That's his new name?
That's his name. Yep.
So as I'm sitting there on the trailer trying to figure out what I'm going to do, after my dad had hung up, I looked over, and there was a Lincoln Town Car sitting in the row of junk cars that were going to be crushed that weekend. And I called the tow truck operator, and I said, what was wrong with that car? He said, I think the tranny was bad. And I said, so the motor runs? And he said, well, I can come over and we'll find out. If it runs, I'll sell it to you for $100 and I'll help you pull it out. So we pulled it out, and we fired it up, and it ran. So we pulled it out. We pulled the motor out of the monster truck, took a completely stock 460, put the injection, everything on it, put it back in, made it 2 more weeks, and sent the truck home. And it came home just looking like the biggest pile of junk ever. Brought it in the barn, stripped it all down, took the body back to Nelson Collision again, and 3 weeks later we had it looking brand new again, and away we went. So learned a good lesson. It was kind of painful at the time, but some of those things that my dad said to me over the phone back then are probably reasons that I've been able to do this for 34 years. So like when I talk to Ryan Holman or some of these younger guys, I try to tell them the same stuff, and hopefully it makes sense to them. It's not easy, that's for sure.
No. Now, you're a first generation, Ryan's second generation, right?
Technically, yeah. His dad drove for a while. His uncle is obviously in the Monster Truck Hall of Fame.
That's his uncle?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
That's not. So
his dad drove for a while, but his dad actually injured his back.
Okay.
Plus he's had some issues with his kidneys. He had to get a transplant and stuff. So
Oh, wow.
Ryan and Josh, you know, those guys grew up around this stuff. Ryan actually used to be my crew guy. For a while I drove for Bobby, and Ryan was my crew guy. So it's pretty cool to see him. And you know, he's a rare breed, because when I started, everybody owned their own trucks, everybody built their own trucks, everybody ran their own trucks. I mean, everybody. And now, you know, a 24-year-old kid, 25-year-old kid, 99% of those guys, probably 99.9% of those guys drive for somebody else.
Yeah. And
Ryan's he pays for his own, he takes care of his own. I'm proud of him.
Oh, wow. Nice.
He does a good job. And you know, that's something we need to see more of, because let's face it, guys like me that are used to doing this for a living and used to making this work, we're not getting any younger.
No. Yeah, so I mean, you've basically been at not since the beginning of it, but shortly after that. You know, I mean, you've been in it since, what, you said the early 90s?
It's funny, I was thinking about, I actually started building my first monster truck in like 96, 97, and I started building, 86, you're right, 86, 87, I started building a truck. I didn't get it done over the summer, and I needed something to drive, so I actually took the truck back apart and put it back to street legal.
Oh, wow.
So I could drive it, collected more parts, and then the following spring I started over again.
Wow.
So I'm sure that my dad was looking at me going, this kid's nuts. But you know, and the funny part is, I never went to a monster truck show.
Really?
I never saw a monster truck in person until I was climbing in my own truck. Back then it was magazines. And there was, every month there was a new monster truck magazine, and I would get them out and I would go front to back, back to front. You know, I still have them all. I still have every one. So all you collectors out there, I probably got one of the best collections. But you know, the problem with that, when you were looking at it in a magazine, that was something that happened 8 months prior to that.
Oh, yeah.
So you thought that you were seeing what was current, and it really wasn't. And actually, the first truck that I ever built, I had it basically 4-link, kind of a funky 4-link that I had came up with, but it had coil spring suspension. It was,
I remember,
way different, and everybody that came in my shop was like, that's not going to work. That's not what everybody else is doing. And after about 6 months, I got nervous, and I took it all back off, put leaf springs under it like everybody else had. And I spent the first 2 years with the Gladiator, putting new spindles on it pretty much every week. I was just ripping the front wheels off, doing all sorts of stuff. Figured out this isn't going to work. And my dad actually said to me, why did you not stick with the plan? And I said, because everybody said it wouldn't work. And he said, are they going to work on it?
Yeah.
And I said, no. He goes, from now on, if you think it works, you stick with it. Yeah. And so I switched it back, and when I came out with that Gladiator with the front 4-link bars and the coil springs and everything, had that truck came out two years earlier, I'd have been ahead of the game. I'd have been, you know, at that point I was equal with everybody else. But from that point on, we've just done what we think is right. The Black Widow, the original Black Widow, was so far from what the normal trucks that everybody else was building that, you know, I got ribbed a lot. I got told that it was crazy, but somewhere that chassis is still out there. It's still together.
Now that was a square tube chassis, right?
Square tube, double tube, yeah. And front 4-link bars.
Yeah.
And you know, that at that point, people had already given up on 5 tons, said they would never work.
Yeah.
Those people that know that I ran 5 tons in the Black Widow for probably 15 years. I mean, a long time, way past what everybody else ran them. And that truck was ridiculously fast. It was pretty light. I mean, to be honest with you, you could probably name anybody that was in the business at that time, and I probably beat him at least once.
Nice.
I had an injected motor. You know, Mason, who was just in here, always asked me about motors. Like, this is a 468. It normally has a 572. The new Black Widow has a 632 in it. Back then, I used to run with injected motors with hand ported heads, and you know, just whatever I had. I didn't have a blower motor till 2010.
Oh, wow.
Probably.
Okay.
It was a long time. And the Black Widow ran single gas shocks on the front, which everybody said that wouldn't work. I set it up, it sat way higher than everybody else's stuff. I just don't really follow what people do. And a lot of times if you ask guys, why'd you do that? They're just doing it because that's what everybody else is doing.
Yeah.
So,
And you bring up good points. A lot of stuff is off the shelf parts, right?
right.
I order it, like Dave's saying, a lot of stuff that he makes, he fabricates himself. His own idea, that's really what got the sport started, was the individual stuff. When everybody came out with everything, they had their own individual personalities to every truck. Nowadays, all it is slap some body panels on, it's one style of frame, maybe a couple of manufacturers, and away you go. I mean, it's a little more commercialized now than it was back then, you know.
Yeah, and people try to buy their way into this, and you know, when Steve Combs came out with these Night Stalker shocks, I was the third person to ever buy a set of shocks from him.
Oh, really?
I saw him on Carolina Crusher, and I got a hold of Steve, and I paid him my money. Well, I was a lower level monster truck guy, and every time he'd say, "I'll have your shocks in 2 weeks," and I'd see him in 2 weeks, and he'd be like, "Oh, so and so needed them for their new truck," and he kept pushing me back and pushing me back and pushing me back, which is fine because I hadn't even started on the new Black Widow truck yet.
Okay.
It was just a concept. I was trying to acquire all my parts. So when he did, I couldn't afford 8 shocks. That's where that came from.
Gotcha.
Couldn't afford it. So I came up with an idea to do coilovers next to my Night Stalker shocks, and I built the coilovers myself. I called Steve and said, "Got any ideas how to set this thing up?" And we talked on the phone, and he gave me a couple ideas, and we did it. And to be honest with you, that first 2 years, I don't think I ever put nitrogen in them shocks, and I know that I never broke a coilover or a shock, nothing. I mean, they were flawless, and everybody kept telling me, "You need to get rid of them coils, you need to get rid of them coils," and I fought it for a long time, and then finally I had enough money to buy 2 more shocks. So I took the coils off, put the shocks on the back like everybody else did, and I didn't have enough for the front, so I was like, well, we'll try it like this. And it's funny, I've heard people tell me, "Oh, if you don't have 4 shocks, you'll break your back, you'll do this, you'll do that." I mean, that Black Widow truck, there's video of it online of me jumping mobile homes with it, me jumping just about anything you could think of with 1 shock, and it did fine.
Yep.
So, I mean, I've had it where I broke a shock now. Everybody's like, "What are you going to do?" I go, "I'm just going to put more pressure in the other one. We're going to keep running it." Because you have to, back then we had to learn how to do it. You just really couldn't get on the phone and just call to buy stuff. We didn't have stockpiles of spare parts like we do now. I mean, now I got spare motors, spare trannies, you name it. I mean, I have 5 monster trucks now, so and I've had more than that at certain times in my career. And you know, you learn that if you break something, you don't just buy 1, you buy 2 or 3, because you're probably going to break it again. And usually Jesse used to say, if you have it, you'll never need it again. So
that's pretty much true. I mean, it happens that way. And like I said, a lot of times, so people understand that either, is that the spare parts, I mean, if you see a good deal on some parts, you probably should pick them up right then and there, right? You know what I'm saying? I mean, you've got transmissions. I mean, people think that these, you know, last a long time. Sometimes they may last you 1 show, sometimes they may last you a couple of years if you're lucky. You know, I mean, you break things all the time on these trucks, and people kind of miss that a little bit. I mean, they see them break and stuff, but again, the amount of labor that you have to put into that is a ton of labor to do that stuff all the time. It's hot, it's physical, it's, you know.
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, I'm really lucky now. I don't necessarily have a job other than this stuff, but I'm out here every day from 8 in the morning, usually till 11 o'clock at night, maybe later, depends on what's going on. And it's not that, if it was easy, everybody would have one. I just keep telling myself that all the time. And you know, my wife asked me along probably 15, 20 years ago, she said, I just don't get it. I don't know how you stay motivated to be out here all the time. And I said, because I remember being the guy sitting in the stands, wishing I was the guy sitting in the monster truck. Mm-hmm. And now that I'm the guy in the monster truck, I'm going to do whatever it takes to stay in the monster truck. So that's been a pretty big motivator. You know, now I'm going to be 59 here pretty quick. My boys, my daughter, my wife, you know, I hear all these people talking about members of their family. Everybody at my house here has driven a monster truck at some point in a show. Wow. You know, Paige drove when she was 17. She was getting ready to go to the Olympic Training Center to live and train for women's wrestling. And so before she went, we knew that was going to change some stuff. So we did a show in Wisconsin, and I put her in the truck. Wow. Just to let them all get a shot at it, you know. And that the Black Widow thing, that I don't know why, but that whole concept is like a huge part of my career. And I was thinking about it before this. It really didn't last super long. I mean, it did. And
before that truck, you mean?
Yeah, and just like the name, just the whole thing. Out of 30 some years, it was probably only 8 or 9 that we were Black Widow. You know, that, just for a backstory on that, that body was actually a panel truck body, just like Gravedigger. Yep. Jeff Dane of Awesome Call, he had it. I don't know the whole story. There's stories that they were going to sue him for too much of a likeness and all this stuff. And I think at the time it was either called Undertaker or Punisher, something along that lines. And they had a similar paint scheme, whatever the deal was.
Punisher seems to strike a belt.
They came after him, so he chopped the top and narrowed it. That's where that whole body came from. And so they went through a couple name changes. We actually, in a weird part of the story, is Greg Adams with Crimson Crusher and I were traveling together, and we were driving, and it was late at night, and I was sleeping in the passenger seat, and Greg started hitting me, and he said, check this thing out. And we were passing a rollback wrecker that had that body strapped to it.
That exact body.
That exact body. And so back then we didn't have cell phones, so we got up beside him and we're like, hey, pull over, pull over. So we got him to pull over, and we got talking to him about it, you know, and we're like, oh, and he said, yeah, we just bought this from Jeff Dane, and what are the chances, you know? But I remember getting back in the truck and telling Greg, that's got to be the ugliest body I've ever seen in my life. And, you know, I've never seen it again for a long time until Ed found it. I went and got it, and you know, we put it back together. It was a huge part of my career. I worked for Ed with it. It was kind of it was actually a buddy of mine came up with the concept and told me he was going to name it Black Widow, and he was going to wear a mask, and he was going to call himself something, and you know, he's going to shoot spider webs, and he's going to do all this stuff. And I was like, that's stupid. And then couple of years later, I called him and said, hey, are you still going to do that idea? And he had moved on to other things, and I said, do you care if I use it? So I took it, and the whole concept with the I don't know if you guys remember, but I used to wear my mask, and they called me Johnny Webb, and all that started in Lancaster, California. I still had the Dodge Dakota body on it, and it was a show for Ed Beckley. And on Friday night, I won the whole show. Everything was going good. And Ed came up to me after the show was over. He said, come with me. And so we went up to the merchandise stand, and he said, can you tell him how much merchandise he sold tonight? And I don't remember the number. It was like $300 just for the sake of the story. And he said, tomorrow, I want you to leave your Nomex hood on, and I'm going to say some things about you at intros don't take it personal, just go along with it.
Yeah.
And so I did, and I came out, and I remember I was standing on my tire, and he was like going on about how I'd been banned from all these forms of motorsports, and just I'm just like, where is he getting this from? And then all of a sudden he said, look real close at his eyes. He goes, you'll recognize him. He used to drive a truck that begins with a G and ends with an R. And I was like, what is he doing? And I watched people in the crowd like mouthing Gravedigger. I could see it. So after the show was over, I said, Ed, are you crazy? And he said, what? And I said, the whole begins with a G and ends with an R. He goes, what was the name of your last truck? And I was like, Gladiator. He's like, okay. He said, now come with me. We went to the merchandise stand, sold 4 times as much stuff the second night as the first. And that right there clicked with me. And, you know, that's what we got. Like my fire suit was all airbrushed to match the truck, like spider webs on it. The Nomex hood got airbrushed. We would go to the shows. I would never even present myself in front of the crowd without the whole thing on. And a lot of hardcore monster truck guys really looked down on me for that whole thing. They didn't understand it. You know, they were, why do you do that? Why do you wear that mask? Why do you do all this nonsense? You know, and there was, at the time, I actually have a letter in there from Ed Beckley back then to all the monster truck drivers that were working for him at the time, explaining, you guys are spending all your money on horsepower, you guys are spending all your money on this. Here's this guy over here, he doesn't have the biggest motor, he doesn't have the best truck, but he's got a show with his show.
Yep.
And he was pointing out the difference in their merchandise money and my merchandise money. And you know, a lot of people don't like Ed. The guy taught me a lot about the whole
Industry
business aspect of this whole thing. I still talk to him, still got a ton of respect for him. And so once I figured out, at that time back then, we used to get paid $1,700 to go run for the whole weekend. I was making 3 to 4 times that in merchandise sales. So I would literally take my check from the truck, put it in the mail, send it home to take care of my family, and lived off merchandise money, you know, and was able to build. And once the Black Widow came around, that turned into 2 trucks. Then I went to 3 trucks. You know, had it not been for that lesson,
No.
I probably wouldn't be doing what I'm doing right now. And, you know, I don't even know, to this day, some of those people still don't get it. They still don't understand.
Well, it's a performing art, right? I mean, it's basically
Right.
what we're doing, and people want the suspense. They want not necessarily the drama, but they want the interaction with somebody. I mean, you're probably old enough to remember, like, what was it, like the guy with the Mach 1 car or whatever they had? Remember that cartoon we always had as a kid?
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever see that?
Yep.
And his brother, which everybody knew was like Racer X, nobody ever seen his face. But that guy would always kind of come into the mix of things at times. You know, it's like, just like your story, it would be the same story, right? You got the name brand people, and then somebody that was on the side that was banned from everything. And that kind of, you know, that added to the drama of the show itself when you're out there. You know, people are wondering, you know, who is this guy? We don't get to meet him, and that kind of stuff. I mean, they love that kind of stuff. They love that suspense
Right.
in the shows. So
And
that's a cool idea.
We after a couple of years with the Black Widow, we did it was in Kentucky. I want to say Louisville. There was used to be a big figure 8 monster truck race at Louisville Speedway, and you know, I'd watched it on TV, and they called me like the week before. Somebody had backed out, and they needed a couple trucks. So I took 2 of my trucks, and we went down there, and I get there, and it's, you know, Taurus and Carolina. Dabney's were there. All these people that I had read about in magazines, they're all there, you know, and I'm just like, holy crap, what are we doing here? And it was I want to say it was 16 truck show, 16 truck field. Well, I made it down to the final 4.
Wow.
And the next morning I got up and I look over and Kurt Dabney was standing by my truck. So I walked over and I said, what's the matter? And he's just shaking his head. He says, I don't get it. He said, everything about this truck is wrong, but the thing works perfect.
Yeah.
And he said, I got to hand it to you. So later on that day, we're all standing around, we're waiting for the Saturday night show, and all of a sudden I look over and there's two guys crawling around on the Black Widow, you know, and I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And everybody's like, you don't know who that is? And I go, I have no idea, but they need to get off my truck. And it was Keith Speller and Mike Wales.
Okay.
From, at the time, I think that was even before they were Clear Channel, but basically Monster Jam. And they were climbing all over it, and they said, you know, if you'll change this, they gave me like 6 things. If you'll change all that, we'll hire you to come run with us. And I said, no, thank you. I said, it works just fine the way it is. I'm not changing anything. And they were kind of not, like, I guess they expected me to react different.
Yeah.
But I was like, I have plenty of shows. I'm doing good. So later on that fall, I got a phone call from Keith Speller, and he said, okay, we still want to hire you. And I said, that's fine, but I'm not going to change anything. And he said, that's fine. Let's just do this. So I think, to be honest with you, that's probably where the Black Widow thing went to, maybe to a higher level.
Okay.
Was by getting in with them, and we started running with them, and they came out with a deal that year that if you were owner operator and you made it to the finals, you got, I think it was $250 bonus. And if you made it to the finals, you got an extra $500, which that was huge money back then.
Yep.
So we went and ran for them. The very first weekend I ran for them was in Des Moines, and it came down to me and Gravedigger in the finals. Chuck Hawkins was driving. I think that was the first weekend that he had actually started driving Digger.
Okay.
And they came up to me before the show and they said, you're broke, or before the finals. And I said, I'm not broke. And they said, we don't know that you'll do what we need you to do, so you're going to sit this one out. I threw a little bit of fit. They wrote me my check, like as if I won the whole thing, told me to sit out. So I did, but you know, as the weeks went on, it got better. I mean, Chuck was phenomenal in that truck. But and then I think it was a week later or 2 weeks later. This has always bugged me because you can see it on the internet. But we did the Pontiac Silverdome, and they got the brilliant idea that me and Jim Kohler needed to freestyle together, which at that time 2 trucks on the track at the same time was unheard of. And so me and Jim Kohler, I laugh because now we know the real thing, but I told him, listen, you stay on that side, I'll stay on this side. No problem. We got it all planned out. I was, as you know, I don't live very far from the Pontiac Silverdome. So that was the best money I ever made. And I was hitting the cars, and I could see my parking spot. And I thought, as soon as I hit these cars, I'm going to go park. This is the best money I ever made. And as I hit the cars, I went up. And when it started coming down, there's Jim. Boom, head on. We hit head on, ripped my front wheel off. He rolled over. I landed, and I was like, what just happened? I was like in shock. I couldn't figure it out. And all of a sudden I looked, and Jim's standing underneath my truck already. He's already out of his truck. And he was like, dude. And then he said a few things that I won't say here, but
keep it family friendly.
yeah, so anyways, it still goes on the internet today about whose fault that was. I made Jim admit last year at the Christmas party in front of his kids that it was his fault, and it really doesn't matter, but I just get a kick out of the experts online saying, oh, you know, Dave did this, Dave did that. I can tell you right now, Dave did exactly what Dave said he was going to do. Jim, who may have been a little overexcited, but you know, back then he was brand new to it.
Yeah.
And it reminds me, we did all the shows. I made it to the finals at almost every show that I did for them, other than Pontiac Silverdome. Worst show I had all year was for them, but after the season got over, I was working for a different promoter, and I think by then I had a cell phone. I remember I was talking to Kohler on the phone, and he was all excited because we got bonus checks. Like we didn't know it, but they had inspectors going around, and if your truck passed inspection, and you had to have stickers in certain spots and patches in certain, as long as you had all that, you got your checklist got completed. You got bonus money at the end of the year. And Kohler called me. He was all excited. He got $800. He just couldn't believe he got $800 bonus money. So I was like, man, I'm bummed out. So I call home and I asked my wife, did we get anything? And she goes, yeah, there's an envelope here. So I had her open it. And they had actually held true to their statement that they would pay you for making the finals. And if you won, you'd get $4,800.
Oh wow!
I got a check for $4,800, which
About did a backflip on that one.
yeah, which was huge. I mean, it was like a couple weeks of shows,
Yeah.
you know, and so that was a good deal. Me and Kohler, we've been friends ever since. I mean, he's went on to do big things,
Yeah.
and you know, I would have never guessed that back then.
Yeah.
But you know, good for him. For me, I don't. You know, I have 4 kids. My kids are all, they were all wrestlers. I mean, between all my kids, I think we have like 11 national championships here, you know, so
Great accomplishment.
at certain points we had to step back from monster trucks, but you know, now the new Black Widow is back, and you know, both my boys are in. My grandson's in, my daughters are in,
Yep.
so
You
this
got
is,
quite a few trucks now. But how did you end up finding that body anyhow? So when you bought the other truck, which was Mama's toy, right?
Mama's other toy. Yeah.
Mama, did you have that before you found the body? You had that before you bought
No, actually, this truck right here
Oh, okay.
is a truck that we got from Jack Caberna. He's a Hall of Fame member.
it? Yeah. Great guy, Jack Caberna and his wife.
I was looking. I lost a couple trucks in a bad deal. I was trying to figure out what to do. I tried to go to the bank. Banks don't like to loan you money on monster trucks.
No.
I called. Jack actually called me one day, said, what are you doing? I told him. He said, why are you going to the bank? He goes, I got a truck sitting right here, come get it. So we had heard rumors about the existence of the Black Widow body still.
Okay.
We knew who said they had it. We saw pictures. It didn't really look the same, but I'm like, it's gotta be it. It's gotta be it. So on our way to go pick this truck up in New Mexico, I contacted the guy and said, listen, I'll trade you a brand new, never mounted fiberglass body for that 30-year-old piece of stuff. And he agreed to it. So we went, and I'm sure everybody thought I was crazy, but we bought it, or we traded for it. We got it, we went down, we picked this up, we came back, and I had gotten this truck out, we were working on it, and Mason, my younger boy, who is a history aficionado of monster trucks, he just, anything monster trucks, he's into it. He kept saying, Dad, let's get that body out, let's get that body out. And I was like, it was pretty rough. It was really rough, and it kind of deflated my whole idea of where I was going to go with it. So after about 3 days, I found it was in the trailer. It was on a pallet, and I remember I hooked a chain and a tow strap to it and hooked the tractor to it, and I just opened the doors up and ripped it out the back door, and boom, it fell on the ground. And he was like, calm down, you're going to wreck it. And I went around and I picked it up with the forks, and at that time it was all white because they had put a wrap on it, and the ink had all washed off, so it really didn't look the same. And I picked it up, put it by the barn, and I just was like, I got a little emotional, you know. It couldn't believe that it was back. Couldn't believe it was the same truck.
After what, 30 years you said?
Yeah,
It's been 30 years since that.
it had been that truck is probably the oldest existing fiberglass active monster truck body in the world. I would bet. I mean, it's that thick in spots. And so we got it out, and I looked at it for a little bit, and then Mason, his OCD kicked in, and he got the heat gun out and he started peeling on it. And if you guys have ever peeled a wrap off, they don't usually come off very well, especially when they're that old and that tore up. It was all cracked. So in little pieces like this big, he sat there for 2 days, and then pretty soon my daughter's boyfriend, Addis, he was out here picking at it, and I'm picking at it, and we peeled and peeled it. But it was cool because as we peeled it off, then you could start seeing, like where it said Rife Motorsports, you could see. So now we know. I knew before that, but now we know that it's
The archaeology, whatever they call it, was there then, huh?
Yeah. So as you can tell, this is the same color purple that was on the original Black Widow. We were doing this truck to make it be the Black Widow. That was the ultimate goal. And we were working on this truck. We had the body. We finally decided to try to put it on there, and it didn't fit, and it wasn't going to fit at all.
Without a lot of cutting on it.
Yeah, and I was heartbroken. So we ended up throwing a Ford body on this, and we just ran it. The other Black Widow body sat outside on 2 sawhorses for another year.
Okay.
The deal came up to buy that Mama's Other Toy, and it was actually had a square body Chevy on it. So when I bought it, I wasn't really thinking that body would fit on there. I knew if I cut it up, I could make it work. But we got it here. We bought it from Frank Church we let him keep his body so that he could hang it on the wall. And I get it. Trust me, I get it on the whole emotional attachment to this stuff. So it was sitting outside. We had it all cleaned up, and I just looked over one day and I saw that Black Widow body, and I said, I wonder. And so I got my kids to all come out. We picked it up and we set it on there, and it fit.
It took a lot of you to pick it up, right?
Yeah, it did. It's heavy. It's one piece, inch thick in spots.
Which today, that's not even, there is no trucks that have a one-piece body.
No.
They're all multi-paneled. Most trucks have a roof, side panels, hood. If that's not multi-panel, I mean, there's a lot of pieces to them. So if you break something, that piece, if you crash it, you've got a lot of repair to it.
Yeah, and I mean, the couple times that we did crash it when I had it before, it was easier just to remount it to that's why it's so thick. We remounted it to the chassis, got it all straight, and we just took and fiberglassed over the whole thing. It's been pieced together, I don't know how many times. And so we put it on and it fit, and I got so excited, just to see it. And
I can remember because we were coming down for something that day in the area. I told him to stop by and see he had another surprise, and pulled up and he had that thing sitting on the body and stuff sitting outside. It was kind of cool.
Yeah, and I hurried up and I got it together. Nick Zuck from Motor City Wraps, he went online. Like, he's super awesome with doing the artwork and stuff. And I told him I want it to look like it's airbrushed, even though it's going to be a wrap. And he actually called me and he said, well, which version do you want, the first one or the second one? I go, there's only one. And he actually pointed out to me that when I had it painted the first time, I had the same guy paint it again, but he just was freehanding it. Well, it's different. It's totally different. I never noticed that until he pointed it out. So if you look at it now, the version is the second version, but he showed up and he put the wrap on it for us, and we were all scheduled to debut it at Kalamazoo Speedway, and they canceled it for weather 2 days prior to the event. And Elliot Miller had been bugging me, which, if you know Elliot, he's a plethora of monster truck knowledge.
Yeah, he's definitely an avid collector, and
he was doing a show at Dragway 42 in Ohio, and he said, if anything happens and you can make it, I want you to be there. Well, I called him Friday morning and I said, well, I was eating breakfast and apparently they canceled the show for tomorrow. And he said, get here now. And literally 2 hours later, he called me going, how far away are you? And I'm like, I haven't even left my house yet. But he was so excited. We got down there, I took both my boys, and when we got it out there, that was the first time we ever even saw it with the wrap, the big tires, everything ready to go. And it was pretty emotional day. And when we went out, we had some, he broke an axle shaft, and when he was freestyling it, you could see the body was just, it was shaking back and forth. And we needed some more mounts on it, and I'm like, stop. And Elliot goes, why are you stopping him? And I go, the body's ready to break off. And he goes, stop. So we came home, put some new things, but the coolest thing about that day was, on the way home, I got a text from Elliot, and it just said, thank you for letting Monster Truck Throwdown have the iconic Black Widow debut at our show. And I was just like, that's pretty cool.
Yep. Because I don't know if you guys follow Monster Truck Throw It Down by Elliot Miller, but he does a top-notch show. He does a great job. I mean, he is off to everything. So to be there, like I said, Dave, that's a great accomplishment.
Yeah, he's probably. I knew Elliot when he was little. His mom used to bring him to the shows. He would do whatever he could do to get in the background. And we did Ionia for him this year, which is where he grew up.
Okay, yeah.
And we went, and it rained the first night, so I sat out. My son Travis couldn't make it, so I'm gonna drive. Well, Elliot comes up to me, and he goes in the trailer, and he comes out with a picture that he took when he was 9 years old of the Black Widow at Ionia hitting the cars. And he said, yeah, you autographed this for me right here when I was 9. And I was like, that's cool. And so the next day it cleared up, and we're gonna run, and me and Elliot actually got to race each other, which was pretty big for both of us. Yeah. I had already broke an axle shaft, so I knew he was gonna get me, but I've already put my request in for the rematch. But anyways, on Sunday morning, I look on Facebook, and there's a picture from 1998 that Elliot took when he was 9, and he went through somebody's video and got to the exact same point, so that the stage in the background, everything was exactly the same 2023 or 2022. So that speaks a ton.
Yeah.
I mean, he took the time to do all that. He remembered all that.
Well, when you get to like that stuff, Elliot sent me up, and I didn't know Elliot at the point. I knew the parents and stuff, but I didn't know Elliot. And I was on one of the Facebook things for Monster Trucks, and he sent me a picture for a show that we had been at when I had the radioactive truck. So like when Dave was saying, that guy Elliot, he knows that stuff inside and out. I mean, there's probably no better historian than he is at this point. I mean, and to know my name, I've never met the guy before, is pretty incredible. So, he knows everything about everybody in that sport.
We were at his house a couple weeks ago, and he pulled out a flyer or a poster from a show from, I don't even remember when, but he shows it to Mason. He goes, yeah, this is the show where your dad cursed on the PA, on the microphone. And I go, I did? And he goes, yeah, don't you remember? And he started telling me the whole thing. And then it comes back to me. It's funny because Jeff Perrin and I started together way back when you had a truck way back, and people will say stuff. Me and Jeff have talked about this. People will say stuff about, don't you remember? And we're both like, no, we don't remember. But then they start talking about it, and it like brings back memories and stuff. And back then we didn't have cameras. It wasn't a big thing. And to be honest with you, we had a video camera. I don't mean to make it sound like we didn't, but we did the Toronto Skydome. When I brought the second Gladiator out, truck was brand new, and my wife would always film everything. And we were at the Toronto Skydome, and we were doing timed passes on the off-road track, and I was fast timed the first round. And Jesse was there, and Jesse was super excited, and he's getting me excited, and he's like, you got this, don't lift, don't do. And so he said, but whatever you do, don't watch yourself on the Jumbotron. And so when you would come around to the last jump, there's the Jumbotron, and you get to actually see yourself jumping, which that was pretty rare. But I hit the jump, and I'm like watching myself on the Jumbotron, and when I hit, all of a sudden I just see dirt, stuff, you know, the truck stops on a dime. I don't know what's happening. My wife was videotaping, and when I climbed out of the truck, and when I got out, the front axle was underneath the truck. I literally run it over. It ripped the whole front axle out, and I didn't even know what happened until the guy tapped me, and he said they were showing the replay, and I watched it, and so when I got home, my wife, I said, well, let's watch it on our video camera. And right when it started to go under, she screamed and dropped the camera. From that day forward, I was convinced that the camera was bad luck, and we just stopped. We just didn't film any of it. And you know, it seems odd to people now because everybody has a phone with a camera on it. But back then, we were just living. I mean, that would have been like going to work, beating nails and videotaping yourself, which, you know, there's people that do that now. But back then, we were just living the dream, and we didn't really think that stuff would turn into anything. I mean, I never thought that the Black Widow would mean that much to me. The Black Widow body we have right now is so thick and so old. We're on schedule with Brothers Racing Bodies to have a new mold made of it this year. It'll be in panels, like what you were saying. I've already got pushback a couple times, so I'm hoping that I don't get pushback in January. Once we get the molds made, we'll get a couple bodies ahead, you know, and then we don't have to be so concerned about it coming apart, because I mean, that's it. That's the only one. My goal is to cut that in half and put one half on the wall here, and hopefully get the other half into the
Museum
Hall of Fame.
That would be, I'm sure they'd appreciate that. That would be a big piece of history.
You know, and even if we had to section it off and put some of the, because that truck's been a lot of names, you know what I'm saying? As long as Black Widow's right where it belongs, we could do the rest. And I know when we were there at the banquet, there was a video running right up by the door that was, I think it was mostly Jeff Dane's stuff, but it just I kept going, there it is, there it is, there it is. You know, that truck that body has been around a long, long time. And I don't think anybody thought when they started with it, it would last that long.
And stay together for that long.
Yeah.
And there's not many other ones that are like that.
And it's, you know, I learned how to do Bondo this year, putting that thing back
After
together.
30 years?
Yeah. You know, I've always had a sponsorship with the body shop, so I just would take it, drop it off, and go pick it back up again, you know. But that was, I couldn't really afford to do it that way. I mean, right now I'm 5 trucks deep. This is what I do every day. I mean, this truck's in here right now. This truck's getting ready to get moved over, so the next truck can come in. We actually, talking about Elliot, he's a collector of hero cards.
Oh, he definitely. He's got a huge collection.
A couple years ago, I gave him, I had a huge stack of them. I don't collect them. I'd rather have somebody that's going to preserve them, have them. So I gave him a bunch, and there was another truck from Michigan that it wasn't around very long, and I kept telling him, I have that hero card. I'm telling you, I have it. And I looked everywhere, couldn't find it. Every time I'd be on the way to the show, we were on the way to the show one day, and the drive shaft came out of my toter home. So we were scrambling to get it, and Elliot texts me and says, do you have the hero card? Like, he's just cool about it. Well, a couple months ago, I was up in the attic, and I moved the tailgate from the bush hog. It was actually laying up there.
Oh, wow, really?
And I picked it up, and lo and behold, there was the ever elusive Wild Thunder trading card underneath it, the hero card. So I messaged to Elliot immediately, which he was just like, you need to come now, you know. But we went over there, and I gave him the card, and next thing you know, he's loading a fiberglass body into the back of the truck. And like this air cleaner right here, he says, you use that kind of air cleaner? And I go, yeah. And he goes, here, take it. And so we loaded the body. I said, what do you want for the body? And he put his hand out and he said, even trade hero card for a fiberglass body. And he says, you need this body. It's the same body style as that, only a single cab, which is what the original Psycho Circus was. So, I mean, that's what kind of guy he is.
Well, he's a character. He definitely. Well, one thing too we might be missing here is who had the bush hog originally and who was involved with Elliot.
Jeff Perrin and his brother Jim actually started it. They back in the day they used to do just like Michigan stuff. They were all over the state of Michigan. I actually did the first show I ever did for them was in Armada, which is ironic now because now I promote that show. But I still remember I went there for $300. First paying monster truck show I ever had. I had one before that I went to for free. But I went there and I blew out like 6 tires on my trailer just trying to get there, and when I got there the beaver tail was dragging on the ground, and it was like, but I thought this is great, this is awesome, you know.
That's what life's all about, guys.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of people would have got discouraged at that point, and I mean, Armada's not that far from here. I don't think we made it home the next day till like 10 o'clock in the morning, and I worked for Jeff and his brother for a lot of years doing stuff, and then funny story about the bush hog was Jeff had built the new truck, was testing it, messed up his back.
Yeah, it was Slick Willie, wasn't it, at that point?
Yeah, and he called me and he said, hey, at that time I was touring all over the country, and he said, hey, you're out on the road. Don't worry, Jeff, I won't tell him how much I paid for it, but he said, I know you're out on the road, the bush hog's for sale. If you'd see anybody, let him know. And I said, what's the price? He told me, and I said, I'll be over tomorrow. So I went the very next day and bought the bush hog off of him, which, you know, that was a truck that I had a ton of respect for.
Yeah, truck's been around a while and really cool old truck.
Yeah, so I bought it and started making money with it the next weekend.
Oh wow!
And it was weird. We did after a couple of years with it, my wife started driving it, and we did a show with Jeff and Jocelyn, and my wife snapped the front wheel off, and Slick Willie was parked at the complete other end of the arena, and the tire rolled the whole way and smashed into the front of their other truck. And I still remember Jeff going, that truck hates me for selling it. It hates me. All the things it could have hit, it rolled down and picked their truck to hit. But and I had that truck for a few years, and the Black Widow, we had done a show in Prescott, Arizona, and I rolled over and pretty much wadded it up, and we had to come all the way back to Michigan because I had to crush a mobile home at Kalamazoo Fairgrounds the following weekend. So we did, and then we had to turn around and drive all the way back to Tucson, Arizona. So on the way back the second time, my wife informed me that she no longer wanted to be a monster truck driver, and that maybe it wasn't as fun as it would appear to be. And you know, we had kids at the time, so ironically, we got done with the show in Tucson. Me and my wife freestyled together that night, which was the first and the last time we ever did that.
Really?
And we had everything loaded up. We decided to wait till morning to leave, and in the morning a guy pulled up and said, do you own the Black Widow? And I said, I sure do. And he said, I'm here to buy it. Is it for sale? And I said, well, anything's for sale. And he wanted me to actually unload everything again so that he could look at it. And I said, I'm not doing that. So you're more than welcome to crawl in the trailer and check it out. So on his way in, he had to crawl over, which at that point was called the Bad Boy, but it was still the Bush Hog. He crawled over it, looked at the Black Widow, he climbed back out, and he said, man, it's kind of beat up. And I said, yeah, I rolled it twice in the last 2 weeks, you know. And I said, it still won last night, it's still mechanically it's good. He said, I don't want to work on it. He said, I just want a truck. How about the other one? So just as strange as that could be, my wife decides on a Thursday she doesn't want to do it anymore, and on Sunday some guy I never met before is asking me what I want for it. So I put a price on it, and him hawed around, and I told him, listen, I got to leave by Wednesday because I got to get home to watch my boy play football, Little League football on Saturday. And so Wednesday I called him and said, if you don't want to buy it, that's great. You know, I got to get going though. And he said, I'll be right there. And he came over 15 minutes later and paid me cash for it. So we dropped it off at his buddy's house and came home. And so that was kind of I had the Black Widow, and you know, now I'm back down to one truck. I did that for a little while, but my kids were all in school, and so now I'm pretty much going racing by myself. Anybody that knows me from all these years knows that my kids grew up at a show.
Yeah.
I mean, until they had to go to school, till the state was absolutely like, your kid has to go to school, they went with me, you know.
Really?
And they're spread out enough that I was fortunate to be able to do that. But I was at a show in Green Bay, Wisconsin, I believe, and Travis, my oldest boy, he was in high school now, and they were having a big wrestling tournament where the school we were going to was it was coming down to the last match of that night, and they're going to be league champs. And the school we were going to had not had a league championship against this other team in like 20 years.
Oh, wow.
So my buddy calls me, and the last match of the night is Travis against this other kid, and my buddy's going to give me the play-by-play of the wrestling thing. Well, I'm sitting in the truck, suited up, belted in. I just don't have my helmet on. And all of a sudden they're telling me, go, go, go. It's your turn to go for freestyle. I'm on the phone. I don't want to go. I want to listen. So I kept acting like the truck wouldn't start. And so they skipped me and went on to the next truck for a second. But he ended up pinning the kid, and the place was going crazy. And so I just hurry up threw my phone in my fire suit, put my helmet on, start my truck up. And the whole time I was freestyling, I just thought, this is stupid.
Yeah.
I'm never going to get this back. So when the show got over, I told him, I said, I'm done. I got to take a break. And so I came home from that. I stayed home, coached my kids in wrestling. That's when it all turned into national championships and all that stuff. And a chance came up to sell it. And the economy wasn't doing that good. Fuel was really expensive, and you couldn't, at that time, you couldn't make enough to justify one truck. And so I sold it, and that was probably, that was pretty tough. But it's what I had to do at the time to make it.
So where'd the truck go at that point?
It's funny that you ask, because it was supposed to go to Florida.
Okay.
The guy that bought it wrote me 2 bad checks. We were chasing, trying to get our money back. We're scrambling. He gave me the story that it wasn't running. He couldn't book it right now, but as soon as he could book it, he would pay me. A guy called me one day and said, you need to go on YouTube, type in Santiago, Chile, monster trucks, do it right now. And he hung up, and I went on, and there's a video of my truck in Santiago, Chile, doing a show 3 days prior to that. So I called the guy that is supposedly not running the truck. He gives me this big story about, he basically lied to me. I told him I knew what was up. Actually, what I said to him was, we're coming to Florida. My kids really want to just climb on the monster truck one more time. Would that be possible? And he said, sure. When do you think you'll be here? And I said, probably in about 2 hours. And he got real quiet. And I said, that's going to be tough since the truck's in Santiago, Chile, isn't it? So he finally confessed to what was going on. I got some of my money, not all of it. Back then, the internet was pretty new still, but I went on Monster Mayhem message board,
Okay.
asked for any information where my stuff was at. Nobody responded, nobody. And I was just like, this is weird. So I went back on again a couple days later and put my email address. Well, the next day I get up, my email is just packed.
Oh, really?
And I knew where the trucks were at, where they were going to be, where they were supposed to be, where they're everything. So I had to do a little detective work, contacted some promoters, pretty much got him to where he couldn't run it. Finally got my money. And that was it. I was just like, okay, I'm done with monster trucks, you know. Much as I love the sport, there's some people in it that aren't in it for the right reasons, which is probably true for any kind of business. But
Definitely.
you know, there's some bad people out there. And I was done for a long time, and a couple of years, I didn't watch it and didn't pay attention to it, didn't want anything to do with it. And then Greg Adams called and hired Travis, my older boy, hired him to come drive. And I went and watched him at a couple shows, and it's kind of like
All downhill from there?
yeah, it's kind of like drinking, I guess. I'm not
the
a
wagon.
drinker. Yeah, I'm not a drinker, but I would imagine it's the same thing. And I got close to it again, and that was it. And
Got bit by the bug.
yeah, and then the next thing you know, I'm back into it with him, and then I started promoting my own events, and then I decided I was going to build a ride truck, and then things just kept evolving. And in 2018, at one point, I had 10 monster trucks here,
wow.
and we were running.
You in heaven, wouldn't you, honey?
Yeah, we were running, you know, at least 4 trucks every weekend, all year, almost
Really?
all year, you know, for a couple of years straight. And I was just like, wow, this is, you know, my dad always told me I'd never make a dime at monster trucks. I did pretty good those couple of years. And then some bad people came in again, and I got caught dealing with some bad people and got the short end of the stick. And I thought that I wanted to not be involved in monster trucks anymore. It was a pretty big hit that I took. I lost a whole bunch of equipment, a whole bunch of money, people that I thought were friends that I found out weren't. And actually a friend of mine said, why don't you change it? And I said, you want me to change the whole industry? And they said, no, but you can change your part of it.
True.
And I didn't really understand what that meant, but you know, we do our own shows, and we have the privilege of inviting people in or not inviting people in. So we just do our own stuff, and if I don't think that you're somebody I can trust, I just don't deal with them anymore.
Yeah, I don't blame you on that one.
And so now we do our own shows, our own ride trucks, our own production. We do pretty much everything ourselves, and it's so much less stressful. It's unbelievable. We still go work for other people. Again, it's if there's bad things going around about them, I just don't need to
Stay away from
I
them.
don't need to find out. I don't need to do it that bad that I would be blinded by it again. I think the Black Widow is, I know why it has a place in my heart, but it was super cool when we brought it back out to see all the responses and how excited people got
All
about
the fans
seeing
there.
this stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was not really what I expected. You know, I've never been, when my career with Monster Jam and all that stuff was going on, and I got multiple trucks, they continued to wanted to use us, but they wanted to split us up. And financially it made better sense for me to keep all my stuff together, and so that meant we had to work for smaller promoters and stuff. But I mean, I've stayed really busy in this business, which, you know, it's amazing to me how many people know who I am.
Yep.
At the same time, some people have no idea who I am or what I've done. So, and now, like you know, now I'm involved as an owner, as a driver, as a promoter, and recently I just bought the company out that we're making the kill radios.
Oh, wow.
For this stuff, and we've got a ton of research and development going on right now that is gonna take that part of it to a whole new level. I mean, we haven't changed kill radios in 20 some years. The new ones, once I can get everybody to switch over, I think people are gonna be like, I can't believe we didn't change this a long time ago.
So that's a little insight. We're kind of letting out a little bit, or what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was one of them things, you know, I've been around this so long, and when I saw the new potential, I was just like, wow, how come nobody's, but let's be honest, we're monster truck guys, there's not too many of us that are, you know, electronically savvy and stuff like that. And the guy that works for me now, Nathan, he's all about that stuff, and he's all about monster trucks, and he's probably the only person I've ever met that is into both of those things at the same time. So he's gonna make some stuff happen.
Nice. Yeah, 'cause these are pretty much all mechanical machines still. They're not high tech or nothing. They're just all mechanical.
Yeah, and you know, some of the mud bog guys, where we live here, we're in the middle of the mecca of mud bog mega trucks here in Michigan, and the amount of money that those guys are spending is amazing to me. I mean, I get it, but at the same time, you got to remember to keep it fun.
Yeah.
Brian Bellini used to drive a truck called the Bounty Hunter before Cretan had a Bounty Hunter, way back, and he.
Are you talking the monster truck Bounty Hunter?
Yeah, it was a red short box Chevy. It actually ended up going to its Airborne Ranger. We sold it.
Did you sell it in '95?
Yeah, somewhere back there.
Before I bought the truck from Allen.
Yeah,
I looked at that truck.
And you know what? It was funny because he called me and he had a really good job offer, but they told him he couldn't be going racing, so he was going to take it. And I remember he called me and said, I got one more guy coming to look at it. If he doesn't buy it, come pick it up and just go run it. And I mean, I thought that this is crazy. This guy's going to give me a truck, but
that was a dice piece, had a big motor and stuff in it.
And Joe Cipher was actually the last one that came and looked at it. He bought it. But he told me a long time ago, he said, what he actually said was, don't give up your day job. Keep this fun. And for a long time, I still think he was right. I don't think that a lot of people could do this day in and day out, you know what I'm saying? But
it's a lot of work, it definitely.
But the first time I saw him a couple years after that, he said, you didn't listen to me. And I did, but I don't know.
This is your day job.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what because to be totally honest, the first thing I ever saw of a monster truck was the Monster Trucks magazine with Bigfoot on the cover, and there was a guy on a 3-wheeler in front of it, and my cousin brought it over and he dropped it. I still remember he dropped it on the coffee table and he said, check these things out. And I started looking at it and I said, that has got to be the stupidest thing I've ever seen. Why would anybody do that?
Yeah.
And it was probably 2-3 years later. That's all I could think about.
Yeah.
That's all I could think about.
All right, so Dave was earlier talking about all the mud trucks and stuff around here. And that's actually how I kind of ran into Dave again, was my wife Amy. I'm going to show you a little picture of her back here. We have an old 48 Ford pickup that we're working on, and I found a transmission transfer case for it. So we're driving past this place, and we look and it's like, man, there's a lot of big tires out there. So we're kind of rushed to get there. It's like, you know what? Go see these trucks and stuff, and we pull up, and this kid's he's about maybe 100 pounds if he's lucky, and he's got this huge mud truck. The tires are taller than he is. He can barely climb in the thing. So we get our parts and stuff. We're heading back. We drive by again. I see tires again. I was like, you know what? I'm stopping in. My wife at times like, you got to be kidding me. I'm like, no, I'm gonna stop in. So I pull up, And I'm looking, and it's like, well, I seen Dave's address out there, and it has Dave's name on the front thing, and that's how I kind of ran into Dave again. And I'm sure he was surprised to see somebody just pulling into the driveway, you know, maybe not, but it was just kind of an interesting story how we end up running into each other again after, oh gosh, probably been 20 some years, you know, small world. And then, like I said, then this same year, Dave gets the body back for Black Widow. I mean, just, you know, how things always kind of work out after time. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, who would think? I mean, I knew him back then. We didn't really know each other, but we ran with each other, and you know, they stopped in, and I took him on a tour and showed him my collection, as we like to call it, which is pretty much never ending. There's like five monster trucks, 2 mini monsters, 6 or 7 go-kart monster trucks, every Power Wheels, other than the snake bite Power Wheels, which we're looking for. So if anybody knows where it's at, get with us. But we just showed them everything, and we've actually been pretty good friends ever since.
Yep. Great guy. You know, been to some of the shows. Can I add the one story in with? No, I can't add that one. That one was hilarious. I'll tell Dave off camera that one.
Yeah, you can let him know off camera.
All right. Do you have some
She'll
questions you want to
kill
ask Dave?
Do I?
Yeah. Cause you.
No, I just want to say, you know, that I was shocked when we pulled into the driveway, you know, because I was like, just because there's big tires out there, I mean, I was excited about it, but I was like, this guy's probably going to think we're weirdos, you know, what are we doing pulling into this driveway? But, yeah, when you showed us and gave us the tour of all your little mini monster trucks, I was like, oh my gosh. And actually, the guy that we bought the parts from, that was the first time I think that I ever saw a mini go-kart like that. I never even knew that they existed, but thought, oh my god, that thing is super cool. We actually asked him, how much you want for that? He said, it's not for sale. Damn it. So then we come here, and I don't know how many do you have out there. Like, there was like 5 or 6.
I think
Yeah,
they
there
have
was a
7
lot.
or 8.
I have some pictures. I took some pictures of them because I thought they were cool. I wanted to show my kids, and you know, because we have grandbabies. I have 2 grandsons and 1 granddaughter right now, but another one on the way in May. And you know, both the grandbabies, the grandsons are into monster trucks too. They love them. They absolutely love them. And in fact, we have some plans for a mini monster truck that we want to build too, and we're gonna name it Mean Mug and Mini. Have a picture of the grandbabies on that. So that's in the works. But you know, we come out here and hang with you, and it just gets me more geeked to do this and want to drive and, you know, hear your stories. Awesome, especially how you got Black Widow back after all those years. That's pretty cool.
Mason got the brilliant idea this year at for Father's Day. He said, let's get the collection out. And I said, let's not. And he was like, I'll help you. It took us almost 2 days to get everything's under tarps, everything's on shelves, everything's stored, but we tired up all 5 monster trucks, got the minis out there,
that's my dream.
The go-karts, we got the Power Wheels, we have a monster wagon for my granddaughter Ruby. We're building their own Power Wheels right now. But we got everything out. Mason ran up, climbed on the roof of the house so that he could take a picture of everything, and then we were like, okay, now what do we do?
Yep.
I got up on Sunday morning, and I walked outside, and I had a whole row of monster trucks sitting here. So I thought, you know what? I'm driving one of them to church, and our church is only down the road about a mile maybe. So we all jumped into one of the ride trucks and took off and showed up for church at it. But when we came back that day, we wanted to do some pictures with it. There was a picture with me and my oldest daughter when she was a year old, standing in front of my first monster truck before it even had a name. So we recreated that with my granddaughter.
Oh, that's awesome.
Took a bunch of pictures. Well, then everything was sitting there, and people started pulling in, and they were like, "This is awesome. Do you do this all the time?" And I was like, never, never, and we probably will never do it again because it took us almost another 2 days to get everything put
But that's
back
so cool.
away.
That's like my life.
I actually saved that picture that you took because Mason had it on Facebook.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's either you did or Mason. Yep.
Yeah, that was sweet. That is major life goals right there.
all this stuff is you know, a lot of these things are things that I wanted to have back when I was younger, but I had monster trucks and I had kids, and I couldn't afford them.
Right.
I mean, you had to make
And that
a
was
choice.
my thing. I couldn't afford it either, and I was not with anybody, you know, that had the same drive as me for the love of monster trucks. You know, it was always really kind of annoying to them, but and I get it if you don't, you know, have the same interest. But Jim and I have. It's crazy because I never thought that, you know, somebody loving monster trucks aside from the drivers and the owners and stuff more than I did, and he's got me beat by, you know, a million, but we're pretty even.
And that's why the fact that you guys pulled in here that day, I mean, I could talk monster trucks all day and all night.
Oh, we could too.
And you know,
He watches, we watch it. It's not, that's the only thing on our TV, really.
we've lived here for almost 30 years, and you can ask anybody, where's the guy with the monster trucks, and they can tell you. But to be totally honest with you, not too many people stop in here, and I think that they think, I don't know, I put my pants on the same as everybody else. I just got lucky to be able to do what I love to do and make a living at
When
it.
some people are doing cool stuff like this, though, not a lot of times they're not as nice or friendly or as approachable, you know, and that's probably why people don't stop by. Is they're nervous, like, is this guy gonna think I'm nice?
And
Is
it's
he
always,
gonna kick us off the property?
it's always been like, people ask you what you do for a living, you don't want to tell them because you know that they're thinking this guy is full of it.
Yep.
You know, what are the odds?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? They're probably, you probably know better than I do. There's probably less than a couple hundred trucks, active trucks going, you know, that people are actually doing this. So,
Yeah.
and even out of that, there's not a whole lot of them that this is what they do.
For a living. And that's the
Right.
only thing they do. Well, when Jim and I first started talking, first started dating, we met because I work at AutoZone part-time, and he was coming in there, and so I'm not going to go through the whole story on that because it'll take a minute, but when we started talking, he's telling me that he had his own, I used to have a monster truck, so I don't even know how we got into the monster truck, but everybody knows, anybody that knows me knows I love monster trucks, big trucks. And so he says, yeah, I had a monster truck. I said, stop playing with me right now. Like, that's not even funny. He's like, no, seriously. And then he sent me a picture of it, and I was like, oh my God, why didn't I know you then? He's like, because you were probably 10.
I would have been just about getting out of jail about now.
So, yeah, so that was awesome. So I knew at that point, like, he was the one, like, this is it, hook, line, and sinker.
Yep.
So, well, I think.
So what you're trying to tell me is that you're ready for your chance to get in the Black Widow and give it a rip, eh?
Yeah. I didn't really want to bring that up.
Tell him the tell him the gas and go story, because she'll.
That was the whole purpose of this interview, Dave.
So,
teasing.
what do they always teach you? When in doubt, what do you do? Exactly.
But anyways,
So-
so we appreciate you taking the time out to, have this interview. Your story is very interesting. It's inspiring. Like, I come out here and I could not believe, number one, that we were out here for as long as we were that day. That was pretty cool, and we got to meet your wife that day. And I think this was all during COVID too, right?
Yeah, it was.
So I know we were all had a few choice words about that too, and still feel the same, if not a little stronger about that. But yeah, I mean, it definitely, you get out here, like you said, you were wanting to get out of it, but once you get back around it, it just gets something going.
It's in your
again.
blood.
Yeah, you just want.
And just for some of the people that watch, a lot of people want to do this, but they don't want to do the work to do it. And for us here, we've put a lot of people behind the steering wheel of a monster truck. Some of them went on to bigger and better things. Some of them went on to other things. It's all I need to see is desire.
You got that right here.
I wish
I'm ready.
I wish I could
I
explain
wish.
to people what it's like. And this truck right here is a wheeling machine. I mean, it will ride. You guys have seen it. The thing will pop wheelies like it's nobody's business. It'll ride wheelies. We're doing a couple different things to it. We think we got the right truck to break the world record for the longest wheeling.
Nice.
But, 30 years into this, I still remember I was at Myrtle Beach Speedway, one of the last shows they did there, and I caught a slap wheelie on the pit road and rode it the entire length of the track.
Nice.
And when I came around and parked, I was just, as soon as I shut the truck off, I just screamed really loud, "We get paid to do this shit." And after all them years, I was just like, you know what? That's my job. My job is to ride wheelies. My job is to entertain people. My job is to go out and do what people just dream of, you know.
And you're very lucky because not a lot of people get to do that.
Right, and like this truck here, Mason didn't like it at first. He didn't like the way it was set up. He didn't like anything, and I said, "I'm gonna tell you right now, just do what I tell you to, and you're gonna love it." And the first time he actually drove it in competition, and he put it right up on the back wheels and rode a wheelie, he came back just screaming, "This thing is awesome!" And he, you know, now he's got a whole gimmick going with it. Wait till you see it this summer.
Yeah, I can't wait to see
It's gonna be cool. But you know, figured out what it does and stick with it.
Yeah.
But, you
And
know,
it is a lot of work because, like you were saying, we're getting ready to build. We want to build our mini monster truck, and even just doing stuff to. We have a '78 Chevy step-side truck that we've been working on for a long time. Actually, we got it going pretty quick because we were trying to get it done.
Took me a
for
week,
our
but
camping trip on our property with the kids and the grandbabies. Because I wanted to drive that sucker into our motorhome that he was telling you about earlier, but we didn't get it going in time. But just out there wrenching on that kind of stuff, and that's not even this big stuff here, you know. And I know how much work it is, but I'm ready. Like I just want to do it. I just want to do it to say that I did it. Check it off the bucket list. Maybe it'll turn into something more than that. I can quit my job for the state, which would be real nice.
that's funny that you say that. We have monster truck ride trucks, and a lady called me this summer. She was, I'm pretty sure she was 78 years old. She was up there pretty good, but she said, "This is on my bucket list. I just want to ride in a monster truck."
Aw.
So we went and we did rides in North Branch, and at the end of the day, I realized that she had never came and rode on the truck. So we sat there and we waited. I finally called her and I said, "Are you coming?" She goes, "What do you mean?" And I go, "Because everybody else is gone." I said, "Well, you said this is on the bucket list.
Aw.
We're not leaving until you ride."
That is awesome.
So she showed up and she jumped in the driver's seat and she said, "I'll drive." I said, "Let's go, man." And she chickened out. She didn't want to do that part, but I took her for the adult only ride, which if you ever rode with me in a ride truck, I probably shouldn't be driving, but
I haven't, but I wanted to do that in Armada, but I think we ran out of time or something.
I get a little crazy in there. But we went.
Okay, but that's on my bucket list too.
She thought that was just the greatest thing ever, and you
That's
know,
so cool.
I remember
That's what it's all about.
Yeah,
you know,
I remember
that
having
kind of stuff.
the Black Widow when I was in Alabama. Trying to think of who the promoter was, but we were doing shows and I was on display at the Ford dealer. And so the monster truck's sitting there and there's all these new cars around it. And this lady showed up and she was in her 80s. And she said, she came up and she grabbed me by the arm and she says, "I just don't get it." She goes, "Why would you crush all these perfectly new cars?" And I was like, no. So I explained to her what we were doing, that we're just there advertising. She came to the show. And when the show was over, she came and found me and gave me a big hug and was just like, "That was the neatest thing I've ever seen." You know, and it was, that was 20 some years ago. I still remember that lady.
Wow.
Just getting introduced to it.
That's
In her
awesome.
80s.
That's
you know.
like some of the kids that I work for, so I do juvenile probation. So some of the kids on my caseload, I'll ask them, I try to get them to think outside the box. I try to get them into this monster truck sport. And half of them have never even seen a monster truck, have never heard of it, have never watched it on TV. I said, "What? Look," and I pull up stuff on my phone and I'm like, "This is the kind of stuff you need to get into. It's going to help keep you out of trouble because you're going to be wrenching on it all the time or, you know, doing shows or whatnot. Keep you out of trouble." But it amazes me the amount of people that have not heard about this or seen it or, you know, been to a show or anything like that. I don't know. It's just been such a huge part of my life, my entire life, that I just thought it was the same for everybody, you know?
And driving always seems to be everybody's attraction to it.
Mm-hmm.
You just need to get around them. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I just love being around them,
Yeah.
period. But,
Well, that's us. That's why we go. I try to hit every single show that we can, you know, and time permitting and work permitting. And half the time he has to work, so that sucks. But we just, if there's a show, if there's a chance to be around him, we're there, you know. And we just love it. And like even going down to the Hall of Fame, I've taken my grandsons down there. I don't take my granddaughter. A little bit younger yet, but she's very sensitive to the loud noises and stuff. But I told her, she said to me just yesterday that she wants to ride in a monster truck because the boys have been on a ride truck, but my granddaughter has not. And so she says, I want to, Mammy. I said, okay, well, we'll get you some earplugs.
Well, that's going to wrap up our interview with the iconic Dave Rife with ATR Motorsports. We would like to give a special thanks to Dave for allowing us to come to his home today to do this interview and to hear his story and his history in the monster truck industry. He's a great guy, has an awesome family, and is a huge inspiration to those of us wanting to get in the monster truck business. Thanks again, Dave. We had an awesome time.